Okay, we're gonna paint the Valentine's tier tray kit. The first thing that you wanna do is either lay out your box or get a piece of paper to lay down because you're gonna need a spot to dab your paint off on. How I start my tier trays is I like to separate my pieces into piles, so by color. So if you're going off of the picture, you can do that, or kind of have an idea of what colors you want for each piece. So I don't know, you probably can't see. I don't think the camera will cover all of it. But I have my white pieces up here, my brown off to the side, and then everything I want to paint pink off to the other side. So let's do the brown pieces first so I can show you how to use the baby wipe method if you're new to that. So you want to make sure that it's moist. You don't want it to be dripping wet, but if it dried out by the time you get to it, then I would get a spray bottle and just kind of squirt it a little bit, or you can always just get water on your hand and then kind of like squish it so that it moistens it. It doesn't need, again, it doesn't need to be dripping wet. Then what I do is I wrap it around these two fingers, and I'm just going to dip a little bit. I don't want too much. And then I'm going to rub it off on the box or the paper. And then I'm just going to wipe it across my piece. You want to go, you want to use a light touch just so that it doesn't deposit a ton of paint in one spot. And then you want to go in the same direction. It goes fairly quickly and it dries really quick, which is so nice. But this will just give it a stained look, so you can still see the wood grain through it. The harder you rub, I don't know if you can see, but I went back through and rubbed it a little bit harder, and it kind of brought some of the paint up. If you want it to be darker, let's say you finished and you wish that it was a shade darker, then just wait for it to dry and then go ahead and give it a second coat, and it will become a shade darker. So you can really customize this however you would like it to look. And then I'm going to do my frame. And you saw how I kind of moved the wipe because obviously as you're rubbing your paint on, your wipe gets fragile and rips. So then I just move the wipe a little bit so that I don't have paint all over my fingers. Okay, so I did the frame, and now I'm going to do the LVE. That's for the just the letters for this piece, and then the little ring for my tag. The little ring is a little bit harder because it's so little. So I just kind of dotted brown on there, and then I used a clean edge of my wipe to wipe some of the paint off because I didn't want it to be so dark since it was such a small piece. And then let's go to the V. It's harder on these little pieces to go in one direction. Oh yes, I did. I was double checking to make sure that I did the right side of the V. And then the E. And then that does it for the brown color. Unless you want it to be darker, then go back through and do a second coat. I'm going to go ahead and set that to the side, and then I will do the pink. I'm just going to start on it, then I'm going to push pause and finish my pieces, and we'll come back when it's time to put it together. So you have a couple different options. I sent you with a big wedge. You can either use the big wedge for the whole thing, or you can paint this piece first, and then if you like the control of a smaller wedge, you can always cut it in half and for the small pieces, but I'm just gonna go ahead and use the big piece. So I'm just actually gonna do the small so I can show you how to use your tweezers if you haven't done that yet. So you're just going to dip your wedge in the paint. You don't need a whole bunch. and then dab up and down so that you don't have one huge glob on your wedge. Then in order to paint these teeny tiny pieces with your tweezers, you just want to gently squeeze the word. I don't pick it up, I don't do anything, I just kind of squeeze it and hold it down as I very gently dab up and down. Otherwise, the word is coming up with the paint. So that's what the tweezers do. They just make life a little bit easier. And then if this is the first time or if you've used wedges a lot, just remember that you want to do a very light touch and plan on doing a couple coats. That way, instead of being globby, it will be nice and smooth and even. Okay, I'm going to use this technique with all the pink pieces as well as the white pieces. Oh, you know what? Let me hurry and do this so I can show you this. So the ones that have lettering engraved on them, the biggest thing is to make sure that you bounce off most of the paint, and then you want to very, very lightly plan on doing 2 to 3 coats over. If you have a ton of paint on your wedge and then you try to bounce the paint up and down, it's gonna cover the engraving and it won't make it, you won't be able to read it. So as you can see, obviously it's very uneven. I need to do it another time or two, but you can easily see the engraving. So very little paint, very light touch is the key. So let's just finish painting and then we'll come back when it's time to put it together. Okay, once you're completely done painting and everything is totally dry, you might have noticed in the pictures that I posted, I did a little bit of accent on the hearts. So I took my wet wipe and I haven't dipped it back into the brown because I want it to be very, very subtle. And I very, very lightly just wiped along the edges of all the hearts. And I didn't make it perfectly even because you kind of just want it to look a little bit distressed. You don't want it to look perfect. And you can do this on whatever pieces you want. I think I only did the hearts on mine. And this is totally optional. You don't need to do it at all if you don't want to. You could do it with any of the colors as well. I guess I should show you what it kind of looks like, huh? So it's just giving a little bit of, hi Charlie, a little bit of an accent. More of a rustic look, I guess. About something. Okay, now we're going to put our pieces together. So, first of all, my area is still a little bit wet, so I'm going to be really careful to not get my pieces in there. So let's do this one first. I'm going to glue the frame on first. So as I always say, when you're opening your super glue, do it away from your pieces so that it doesn't splurt out. And then when you're putting super glue over, make sure that you're not on top of other pieces. A little goes a long way and it dries very quickly. So I'm going to try to stay in the middle as much as I can. And I'm dragging the tip so that it's not like squirting out. It's just like a really, really thin layer. And then I'm going to use my fingers to fill along the edges of the top and the sides. And then when it's even, I'm going to hold down for 5 to 10 seconds just to make sure that it really sticks down and one side doesn't pop back up. On the letters, I usually just set them down because they can dry very quickly. Okay, so I'm gonna do the My Love. Did I? Somehow, it wasn't now because I just washed my hands, but somehow I got a little bit of brown on there. That's okay. Just a little bit of sanding got it off. Okay. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of super glue there, there, and there. And then use the etch as a guide to set it inside that. Do the Y. And then I'll show you a little trick for the even smaller pieces so that you don't get super glue all over your fingers. Just dot there and there. Oh, you know what? Oh no, I don't need to. No, wait, I think I do. I think I need to press pause and go and cut ribbon. I don't think I did that before I painted. Okay, now I'll show you the trick with the small pieces, and then I'm gonna go cut some ribbon and be right back. Okay, so for instance, for these little tiny letters, if you're gonna hold it, I mean, you can always hold it, but if you're like me, you're just gonna get super glue all over your hands. So I like to, you probably couldn't see the whole time I was gluing, could you? So I spill out some super glue onto my box, and then I just take this and I just dip it into the super glue, dip the excess off the side, and then put it on the piece. Add a little bit more, and then we'll do this one. And it doesn't need, oh, I don't think I got it on that side. It doesn't need too much, so that's why I dip it off to the side to get most of it off. Might need a little bit more. It dries fairly quickly. There we go. And then I hold it down, and then we have our first piece. Okay, I'm gonna set that over. Let's do our love. Oh, right here. So I'm just going to put, my pieces are kind of off camera that I'm gluing onto because this big white spot is still wet. And so I guess I can try to turn a little bit, but I'm still kind of far away. The V. Oops. And so I accidentally squoze instead of just dipped, so I'm just going to wipe that onto my box before I press down so that super glue doesn't just squirt out the side. And then we have that one done. Let's go ahead and do our banner. So I'm going to try to make them like even, like place them evenly. And it's okay if they're not perfect because as you string them onto your tier tray, they're not going to hang perfectly straight across either. but I am going to set them next to each other so I can at least get them somewhat close. Okay, now I'm going to carefully move those over while they dry. I need to go and let's do our world while I wait. Get that in a little bit of paint, that's okay. Okay, so same thing. I'm going to put some super glue onto the side here, and then I'm going to dip, dip, and then line up. It's kind of crazy to me how it's almost Valentine's Day already. I mean, yeah, we still have a little bit, but it feels like it's going so fast already, which is good. I'm ready for spring and summer. And world. I hope that you can even see. I'm sorry, I should have just moved my paper away, but I tend to get super glue droplets sometimes, and I didn't want to get that on my table. I guess I could have moved it this way or something. Okay, now for the world, have an idea of where it goes. Obviously you're following the etching, but you don't want to be completely turning it around and messing with it. And then I'm just gonna go fairly quickly since it dries so quickly. So I did a very little squeeze on the big parts, and then I'm just gonna drag my pieces on the end on the edge pieces without squeezing, so that I'm not dripping glue, but it's still getting some super glue on there. If that made 0 sense, just tell me and I will show it better. And then just line up the edges, feel with your fingers that it is even, and then hold it down until it is tight, dry, clamped, whatever. Okay, I'm gonna do this and then I'll go cut my ribbon for my tag. Ooh, see, that's why. Did you just see the droplets of super glue? That's why I keep my paper down. And then I still have some wet super glue there. I'm just gonna line it up with my tag there. Okay, I'm gonna go push pause and go and find the ribbon really quickly. Okay, I got the ribbon. So what I did is you can tie it however you want. I put mine in half, and then, come on, I'm not feeling very. And then from the back, I poked it through like so, opened it up, and then pulled it through. And then that's it. And then you can trim it as small as you want, because it's just supposed to be like a little tiny cute tag. And that is it. Oh, of course, put your twine through your banner. I go from the front, so I string my string along the back, but you can always string it along the front however you want. And that's it. Let me know if you have any questions.